Hello, and welcome to Once Upon a Time in Black History. I am your host, Tamara Shiloh, author, educator, and owner of the Multicultural Bookstore in Richmond, California, and Las Vegas, Nevada. You can also find us on my website at onceuponatimeInBlackHistory.com. Our shows are sponsored by the Multicultural Bookstore, and if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, please send me an email at tamarashiloh@gmail.com. Alrighty then, let's get this party started. Hello everyone, and welcome to Once Upon a Time in Black History. I'm your host, Tamara Shiloh. Before we begin today's story, I'd love for you to visit my bookstore online at themulticulturalbookstore.com, where you can find wonderful books celebrating history, culture, and inspiring people from around the world. Now, let's travel back in time to Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. Most people know the name Rosa Parks. She is famous for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated bus. But what many people don't know is that 9 months before Rosa Parks, a brave 15-year-old girl did the exact same thing. Her name was Claudette Colvin. Claudette was born on September 5th, 1939 in Montgomery, Alabama. She grew up during a time when unfair laws like Jim Crow forced Black people and white people to live very separate lives. Black children often went to different schools. Black families had to sit in separate sections at restaurants, and on city buses, Black passengers had to sit in the back. Even worse, if the front of the bus filled up with white passengers, Black riders were expected to give up their seats. Now imagine riding the bus home from school or work after a long day, sitting quietly in your seat, and suddenly being told you had to stand up just because of the color of your skin. That was everyday life for Claudette. She was a bright student who loved learning about Black history. In school, she studied leaders like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, women who had fought bravely against injustice. Their courage stayed with her. One afternoon on March 2nd, 1955, Claudette boarded a city bus after school with several classmates. The bus slowly filled with passengers. More seats were needed for white folks. The driver looked back at the row where Claudette and 3 other Black students were sitting. He ordered them to stand so white passengers could take their seats. 3 students stood up, but Claudette did not move. Later, she said she felt as if the hands of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth were pushing her down in that seat, telling her not to give up. The bus driver became angry. He called the police. When the officers arrived, they asked Claudette why she wouldn't stand up. Her answer was simple but powerful. She said, "It's my constitutional right." Those were big words for a 15-year-old girl. But Claudette had been learning about the Constitution in school, and she believed the law should protect everyone equally. The police dragged her off the bus. They arrested her and took her to jail. Now imagine that for a moment. A teenage girl still in her school clothes, sitting in a jail cell simply because she refused to give up her seat. She was charged with several crimes, including disturbing the peace and violating segregation laws. Her arrest shocked many people in Montgomery's Black community. Civil rights leaders began talking about the unfair bus laws more seriously. But because Claudette was young, unmarried, and pregnant during the proceedings, it became widely accepted that she was not accredited by the civil rights campaigners due to her circumstances. And because leaders worried about how the public might react, her case did not become the major protest some hoped it might. However, 9 months later, another woman refused to give up her seat. That was Rosa Parks. Her arrest helped spark the famous Montgomery bus boycott, when thousands of Black citizens refused to ride the buses for more than a year. But Claudette Colvin's courage was still very important. In fact, she played a key role in the court case that finally ended bus segregation. Claudette became one of the plaintiffs in a federal case called Browder versus Gale. In that case, several Black women challenged Montgomery's bus segregation laws. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and in 1956, the court ruled that segregated buses were unconstitutional. The unfair bus laws were finally struck down. That meant Black passengers no longer had to give up their seats. Claudette Colvin's bravery helped make that change possible. For many years, however, her story was not widely known. History books often focused on Rosa Parks, while Claudette's earlier protest was rarely mentioned. But over time, historians began to tell the full story of the civil rights movement, and Claudette Colvin finally received the recognition she deserves. So, remember her as one of the young heroes of the civil rights movements. Sometimes courage comes from a young person who simply knows what is right. Claudette was only 15 years old when she stood, or rather sat up, for justice. Her quiet act of courage helped push America one step closer to fairness. And that is a story worth remembering. Again, thank you for joining me today on Once Upon a Time in Black History. I'm your host, Tamara Shiloh, and don't forget to visit themulticulturalbookstore.com to discover books that celebrate amazing stories of people who helped shape our world. Until next time, remember, history is full of brave people, some famous and some whose stories are just now being told. And sometimes the smallest act of courage can change the world. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Once Upon a Time in Black History. For more information on this topic and others, visit the Multicultural Bookstore at multiculturalbookstore.com. And again, if you want to advertise in our podcast for a mere $25, please contact me at tamarashiloh@gmail.com. See you next time.